Cold War gone hot scenario was something that terrified Western commanders. It would have involved hordes and hordes of Russian forces running along the entirety of Germany, steamrolling anything that got in its way. The thing that really terrified them the most, though, was actually the onslaught behind. The replacement forces and convoy after convoy running along the main supply routes, or MSRs, was something that was far more dangerous. ZSU 57-2s were on hand along the convoy to support against air attacks. However, they were found to be completely inadequate against aircraft that were coming out. These aircraft were too fast for the turrets to traverse and didn't have a rate of fire that meant they had a chance of scoring a reasonable hit. The thought of Soviet forces being struck with complete impunity before they even got to the battlefield and decimated terrified Soviet commanders. Without bullets and bombs and trucks or replacement tanks themselves, there would be no chance for the Soviet commanders to be able to replace the losses that they undoubtedly would have received along the front line. What they needed was something that was fast enough to keep up with the convoys, had the ability to see further away, have a higher rate of fire, and was able to keep up with the jets that were coming out. While the Ordies have a quick look at the bombs and bullets and systems that we have on our chosen jets today, we're going to have a quick look in the vault and see what they managed to replace the 57-2 with, and why it's still in service to this day. And a very belated good day to you all on Chapter 3 of SAM Brief, which is the ZSU 23-4, also known as the Shilka. You got here an East German one doing a firing exercise with its partner over there in the corner, and we'll see a little bit more about its development in short order here. Initially, the 23-4 was designed to come out in the early 60s. Initial conception was about 1957, so we were on par with things like the SA-2 and the SA-3 as part of the Soviets' efforts to upgrade and renew its aging anti-aircraft defense systems. The competitive trials first began in 61. It was officially adopted in 62 and first fielded that we know of in 1964. Originally, it was going to be a 37 millimeter cannon with two turrets, hence the 37-2. And the reason for this apparent downgrade from a 57 millimeter, the previous model, is actually more smarter than it sounds. So the 57-2 was manually traversed, optically aimed and fired. So that means it didn't have a radar system directly attached to it, and it could only really see things and engage them visually. It had no other means to do so. So it was limited by that, and obviously weather and other terrain can affect that. As a result, 57mm rounds are not particularly effective against Mach 2 aircraft like F-105s and things like that, the Century series that it was facing up against. The rate of fire is too slow, so you can't put enough rounds in a certain volume of air to get hit. The muzzle velocity of the round is too slow because they're too heavy to get to the altitudes if the aircraft wanted to go high. And if it wanted to go low,
it wouldn't be able to it would be outpaced by the movement of the aircraft. It's also complete overkill. Although that round is very devastating once hit, you didn't need a round that powerful, so you got all of the disadvantages and very little of the advantages with that. The 57-2 is also an open-topped area, and when we're talking in the late 50s and early 60s, we're really seriously concerned about tactical nuclear weapons, NBC, or nuclear, biological, and chemical defences, and an open-topped anti-aircraft defence system is probably not very survivable in a battlefield of the time. The solution was a radar-guided system with a lower caliber and a higher rate of fire. Unfortunately, the 37-2 was considered too expensive to produce in the numbers that the Soviet Union needs. Remember, they have a massive land army. So the 23 TAC-4 was offered instead. So 4 guns, but even lower caliber rounds. It's still in use to this day by it was used by the USSR, now the Russian Federation, and their allies. You have also got Cuba, Egypt, India, Vietnam, and it's damn near everywhere, right across the Middle East, of course. Russia to this day still uses them in limited numbers for things like their equivalent of the Marines. It was actually originally designed to defend convoys against low-level attack. After all, remember, you have the SA-2 and the SA-3 doing theatre defences for tactical and strategic areas. And we'll get more to the missile systems that were used to provide higher altitude defences in a later episode. According to analysis by the US Army, the Soviet doctrine of the time would have taught a minimum of 2 in a convoy. 4 is more usual, and this is where you would really have seen the Shilka. Because it's a tracked vehicle, it moves. It would have been intended to accompany convoys of tanks, trucks, IFVs, troops, to escort them to the front line, provide their reinforcement, provide their logistics resupply, and escort them back away from the battlefield. They'd also be used alongside things like tanks to support them and prevent a CAS attack on the tanks from above. It would also have been supported by SA-9 and manpads, which once again we will get to at a later episode. Because it's an enclosed design, it's also NBC protective, and it's mobile, of course, it's on tracks. It was designed that it would be able to move and shoot or operate statically as well. The current stats that I have from things like the SAMSIM manual, which is based on information provided by a former Hungarian air defence operator. It was advertised as running about 50 kilometers an hour on road, about 30 on dirt. And as you can see, it was a gas turbine system, so it did consume a fair bit of fuel, but it also was provided a fair bit of fuel in return. As a result, based on calculations that I've made myself, which are probably not amazing, but under ideal circumstances, you could expect it to travel between 271 kilometers over dirt or roads, assuming on a 100% perfectly serviceable system. Now, it cannot link directly to integrated air defense systems. It was never expected to do so because it would be moving in the field. You can't just have a really long cable run from the local IADS to a mobile AAA system. What they would do though is the local command posts would receive the data, and they would be linked to the integrated air defense system, and then they would verbally transmit that information, headings, bearings, and distances to the unit commander, who would then assign a sector of fire for the Shilkas. Fire control is an electrical mechanical computer. This is a wonderful piece of kit, and the more I started reading about it, the more amazed I became about it. For those of you who do things like submarine simulators, think of it like the old World War II and post-World War II era torpedo data computers, things like that, but on total steroids. There are about 60 motors, about 110 different axles, rods, cams, and gears. It's an incredibly complex mechanical computer. And the reason why it is so complicated is because it's trying to do physics calculations on the fly in 1957. It takes data from the radar and the gyroscopic stabilizers that are built into the vehicle. and it merges that together to calculate the time of flight for the bullet, how much lead to give it in elevation and azimuth. It then takes that data and slews the turret, lays it onto that heading and elevation, and that's how it determines the aim point and when to fire as well. The radar is an RPK-2, also known by NATO parlance as Gundish, not fire can, as commonly referred to. It's actually got its own name. It's a smaller radome, and as a result, it runs at a higher frequency than the normal ones we've been seeing recently. This is the J band. It's considered quite difficult to be detected by aircraft until you're in its range, and it's much less sensitive to ground clutter because of the fact it's running on a higher frequency. We expected sort of minimum detection of an object of about 60 meters away, so that's pretty close. But obviously, you're more likely to see things further away. As a result, though, it does have a much lower maximum range. The maximum theoretical range was about 20 kilometers, but the SAMSIM operator manual specifies that his experience was between 10 or 15 kilometers for something about the size of a MiG-21, for example. It's also a very narrow beam because of it being a smaller radome, so 2 degrees wide, but 15 degrees high, so it's an extremely narrow, high-altitude pencil beam. Specifically a conically scanned pencil beam, and there's a range gate built into it that the range officer themselves must specify. So you will then specify a range between plus and minus that the radar searches in, and then with that information in case, you can then use that to lock the target. Weapons, you've got 4 times AZP-23 cannons. These are 23mm water-cooled, electrically fired, pneumatically charged, hydraulically aimed, and gyro-stabilized systems. If there's a mechanism attached to these cannons, it exists. The rate of fire as a result, though, is pretty heavy. 3,400 rounds per minute, which means you could totally fill an area of sky with a massive hail of bullets. About 3 high explosive incendiary bullets for every 1 armor-piercing round. So it's a good mix designed to tear up an aircraft and ignite fuel, set off weapons, basically just shred the aircraft. It'll carry about 2,000 rounds on board, which is considered, given that you're meant to fire in small controlled bursts, it's easily considered enough to defend a convoy while also carrying your rounds and fuel. And just remember as well, each Shilka was assigned its own truck dedicated to carrying parts and ammo. The Gyrocompass System, the electromechanical computer, the SRP, it will only allow fire to be... You can hold down the fire button all day, and it will not fire until it decides that there's effective range and adequate solution. In other words, if the radar detects a contact and it's out of range, you can hold down the fire button, and the gyro computer, if enabled, will just block the shot. It will not allow it to go through. And the commander or the operator, it's also known as the angle officer, is able to fire the gun depending on the setting by the commander. So the commander chooses who has firing control at the end. There's a crew of 4. The driver is solely focused on moving the Shilka. There are 2 operators for both angle and range, so 2 separate stations control azimuth and elevation. That's how much workload there is for each position. And the commander themselves has control of things like the radio, weapon assignments, and usually fire control, as from what I've read.
Good day everyone, and welcome back to Sam Brief. Today's chapter will cover the Shilka and its performance specifications. I'm your host once again, Figmo42, and thank you very much to Ghost Dog for allowing me to do this segment. So once again, let's rattle off some statistics. So the operational range, of course, includes slant range, is 3,000 meters, which for you Imperial followers is about 1.8 miles. The effective range of this system, so where we're actually going to start probably hitting targets with reasonable frequency, is 2,500 meters and below, or about 1.5 miles. So you can see this is definitely a point defense, last-ditch weapon for defending of assets and convoys mostly, of course. Interestingly, the armament of this system, as it is a cannon-based system, is technically 0, as of course bullets have no arming distance. Of course, I'm sure some of you will put me up in the comments for that, as some do. But in this case, it literally is just high explosive shells and armor-piercing shells mixed in belts. The maximum altitude that you will probably hit anything in this system, which is stated by the FAS and the GRAU, is about 1,500 meters, or just short change of 5,000 feet-ish. The minimum altitude for the system is once again 0, as although the radar will have definite issues picking up below, sort of on treetop, it does have an optical backup. However, of course, this does come with the caveat that you have to have a very well trained gunner and commander to have any real accuracy with this. But of course, don't forget this system can also be used to engage static ground targets or even moving ground targets with some difficulty. Examples of this in real life, of course, have been Syria, where again, if you want to see a bit of war footage, I don't really recommend it, but if you're interested, there are videos from Aleppo where they were using these things, very similar to Grozny actually, where they drive them in and they would use them to destroy insurgent positions in buildings due to the high elevation of the 85 degrees, I believe the Shilka can achieve. The guidance. Okay, so the radar, of course, as Ghost has already mentioned, is Gundish, which is a J-band high-frequency search and track radar. And this, of course, is paired with a fire control system, which allows for complete automatic engagement of targets. Or alternatively, in the presence of a high electronic warfare environment, or if the radar has been broken, as of course it is an exposed radar, so if you get fragged in the dish, there is the backup optical guidance using a day sight. Anyway, that's it for the performance specifications. So back to you, Ghost Dog.
Okay, everybody, here we go. Let's start this sucker up and get ourselves all online and running. Start first of all, power. And it is a type of device. Okay, that should be slightly better. Once the gas turbine is up and running, we'll have power. There we go. The 24 and 50 volt system is running, so let's get the stabilizer running. While we're at it, let's set the minimum elevation to 0 because we're going to be shooting low today. We'll start and charge the guns. We'll go to operator control. Turn on gyros for the gyro computer. And then we'll start up the radar system. So this warms up the vacuum tubes. I'm not kidding you. Then we flip on, basically we energize the anodes that power the displays. Then that allows us to enable the radar. And all looks good on this end. Systems are up and running. We are looking good. Power to the displays and power to the radar. So you see there the range markings for 20, 15, 10, 5 and of course 0. The small narrow band of lines there is the range gate. That is controlled by the range element. The range gate here is controlled by the range officer. This is the radar beam in range. This is close, this is far away. And every single one of those spikes are returns, but in the case of this, we happen to know that is, for example, ground clear. What we would be looking for is a line moving, because that means it's moving, it's mobile. have the display marked with numbers 1 through 60. This is the Russian mills system. They have 6,000 mills in a circle because the Russians like to be different. And we have here the plot. Now the plot would be managed by the commander. They're receiving radio reports in their ear from their battalion command, who is connected to the IADS, saying, plot 5305 is your assigned target. This is its current course and heading and speed. And you can see that information presented here. You have 2 contacts presenting as enemy. Angels 9. And descending, as we can see there. That's 7,300 meters. And this, or is it 73 meters? It's slow. I believe this is hectometers, so that's 730 meters and lowering down. These range circles represent 50, 100, 150, and 200 kilometers. Remember, we're not expecting anything closer than 10 or 15 kilometers, so we're not really going to see them until they get closer to this kind of point here. Now, we know then that the contact is running this way. And it comes, and it's planning on running in to attack us. Our best shot is to get it when it's on attack. And we probably won't be able to track it until it's about this location anyway. So far, we're laid on at 16, 17, probably about 1800 mils, maybe 1900 mils here. So somewhere around here. And you can adjust the elevation control here. So, to help understand what's really going on here, let me show it to you orientated this way. So imagine this here is azimuth. What the display is showing is a side angle. So this is elevation. So that's a valley in ground cloud. So above this line is up and below this line is down, not left and right as you might expect. Now we can also specify an automatic searching area. And then to disable that we can simply direct it ourselves. We can also specify a circular scan. This takes quite a long time, and to be perfectly honest with you, I have no intent to use it because we don't need it. We know we're getting better information, so we're going to manually lay the gun on. Coming through 50 kilometers, we're at 2000 mils, so we're going to be very close to 2100 by the time the next minute is through. You can see it can actually depress below 0, but we don't need that. We need it to be closer to this. You see 210, so that's like 20 meters. They're skimming the ground. They're NOE. You'll remember from previous episodes that 8 is the number that represents confirmed hostile, 2 is the contact's number, and this is hectometers, so this is like 210 meters. Now they're down to 60 meters, so they've gone super low to the dirt. 21, 22, 23. We're probably going to come in from about 24 or 25, so let's bring the dome round from that distance and start scanning. Just moving the mouse gently back and forth, looking for a contact to appear. Remember, this is 20, 15 and 10. We're expecting contact between 10 and 15, so I've preset the range officer's initial guidance about that area. So basically I'm just looking for any of these radar blips to start moving. Okay, so coming down the chute at angles 24. We're expecting it very close aboard this azimuth here. Oh, contact. Switches are for operator. Now waiting for the shot to clear. Waiting for this green light, green light. Impact. And I think we got his buddy. His friend is now like 11 kilometers away, so we've defended ourselves quite effectively, I think. Let's shut her down and see how we did. So 2,000 kilometers. Sorry, so we started on. So it calculated we were in range just in front of 3,500 meters. No hits. No hits. Coming into 2,500 meters. No hits. Target distance at 1,500 meters. Hits. And we've destroyed that contact. So you had a 1,500 meter hit effectively. That's how close in you have to get. But you can see it's quite a deadly system if you know where to look or if you're already alerted. Let's see how we can try and kill it on the battlefield. Welcome back everyone to Syria. We're going to be in a different area this time. This is a largely made up scenario, this one. There's not very much historical reality for this, but basically we're going to take off from Incirlik Air Force Base in Turkey. The Vigans will have this as their initial turning point. It's a large flat area, nice and easy to find on the radar. And then we will have this mountain here, or this hill here, as the pull-up point numbered B2. And I'm intending to pass slightly left of that or slightly right of that so that I can drop my stick of bombs. We already know that the enemy convoy that we've been tasked with attacking has stopped just short of the bridge while they do a route clearance. So my intention would be, ideally if I had multiple Vigans, would be to do parts of the convoy in series. Now this bit of the convoy starts going a different way. So I would perhaps, if I had 2 flights, I would have 2 flights run in this direction. So coming in from my attack point that I've selected, this way. And then a second flight might come in from the coast, maybe around this hill here, and do an attacking run this way. This would allow you complete coverage of the convoy. Unfortunately, it's just me, so we're just going to have to pretend that the other flights are good, because I have tried for the last several months to try and get the Vigans to drop one stick of bombs in one pass along one axis, and AI can't do it. And I have also tried to get multiplayer arrangements done, but my schedule always conflicts with somebody else's or theirs, or there's always one guy who can't do it. So rather than getting into that too much in the weeds, I'm just going to take one single Vigan. I'm going to drop a stick of bombs along this area here. I had also considered earlier, and I did try it, doing a pop-up attack using low drag bombs. So pulling up high over the mountain and then coming down to do a dive bombing attack, but the Shilkas were way too quick for me on that. So it turns out it's better just to suddenly come out of nowhere from here and blitz in before they can reasonably get a good chance of getting a shot in at me. Either way, once out, we'll dive out. We'll turn right and try and look for there. I need to see there's these little hills here and here, and this depression area of here. So I'm going to try and turn out to the right and go down through this little gully here, or over this mountain here. Just try to get some terrain between us and the enemies. The Shilkas, of course, are not the specific target. I'm sure we'll end up hitting one or two of them anyway, but the Shilkas are not actually the intended target. The Shilkas are just the defenders of the convoy. Remember, we're not at this point in time going for anything other than the convoy itself. The convoy is the target. So in this particular case, instead of us directly attacking the surface-to-air missile system, we're attacking assets protected by it, which is exactly what the Shilka was designed to defend against. Okay, we've got our Vigan configured and ready to take off. Let's get rolling. Now, there is a really annoying thing that keeps connecting and disconnecting on my computer. I can't figure out what it is, so I'm not going to mess with it. Now, in case you're wondering where I get these crazy ideas for how to conduct these mad Vigan attacks, I figured you should probably look at something. This is the Swedish flight manual, dated 1961, on how to conduct attacks effectively from the air. This is basically their tactics manual for attack aircraft. It's been declassified, so nothing wrong with releasing this now. In fact, it was taken from the Swedish Air Force's own documents section. So this is publicly available stuff. The link is in the show notes and on my screen right now. Now, I do not speak Swedish. This was a problem for me, but I am able to work around this thanks to the fact I have a friend from Sweden. And without Mr. Eric Jonsson, his fine work, I would have a little bit of a hard time doing this. He's also a fan of DCS, and he decided to translate the relevant parts of this flight manual that can be applied to the Vigan for mission makers, things like that. He says himself in his own little bit at the start that he's not a professional translator. He just speaks Swedish and English very well, and I can agree with that from conversations with the man. He explains the structure of the Swedish Air Force. So a flygplan is an airplane, a single ship. You have a rot, which is 2 ship, a grupp, which is 4 ships or a group, a division, which is 2 4 ships, and then a stridsgrupp, which is your combat group. I'm probably murdering that completely, but I thought it'd be hilarious for him to hear me have a go. I'm not going to keep trying to speak Swedish. It will end up sounding like Swedish meatball guy. This outlines the Swedish military's complete plan for how they were going to defend Sweden from an invasion. In their case, from attack over the sea, from over the land, or by air. So their priorities in this order were to take out transport shipping and landing tonnage, then any maintenance and reinforcement transports, then raid and mining missions, so any minesweepers, for example, or naval gunfire support. Anything over the attack of the border, they first of all want to disrupt communications and any transportation of troops coming in. So they're going to look for troop transports, trucks, and command and control. Then they're going to go for any personnel and material concentrations. Then they will work on any combat-ready forces. This is where they're talking about close air support. Alright, so we've hit our turn point number 1. I'm going to bring the jet around. Start working through the terrain here. Now, this area is blessed with a lot of hills and valleys, which, as we said in the briefing, is going to help us with our low altitude ingress. I'm hoping that the Shilkas won't see me up until basically it's too late. So let's just remember the ideal profile for a level low bomb attack, about 150 meters off the deck, which is how I'm set now. Speed about Mach 0.8. You see there a nice stable platform there. The circle represents this distance between the circle and the dot represents my bomb attack line. So everything between that is going to get hit by bombs, hopefully. You can see as I get higher up, the bomb fall line goes further and further down the HUD. So we'll see how that goes. Now, in terms of low flying, all I'm doing is keeping the flight path marker above the next ridge that I'm about to cross. So this one, then that one. We can see there, I'm going to try and slot it between this gap, between these lines here, like so. And every time I turn the jet, you'll notice the nose starts to dip down all by itself. So we normally apply a little bit of aft stick when we're making a turn to stop that from happening, but we can always accept that drop if it'll help us get ourselves that little bit lower. Take it under advisement. So we take a left turn here, a right turn here. You see we're just slotting in between gaps in the valleys. Now there's going to come a point where I have to do a ridge crossing like this. So I'm going to keep the flight path marker at the blue sky here. And as we cross this ridge line here, this tree looks like a good marker. We're going to roll the jet, pull down, and roll back out. And that's kept our time exposed to a minimum. And I'm still just following the flow of the valley. I'm going to do another ridge crossing here. So I'm going to slot myself right in this gap between the two trees and pull down and low. And I'm going to take a right turn slightly because I happen to know that my steer point is that hill over there. But because we're doing a low altitude ingress, my intention is actually to take a go left of the steer point. So what I'm going to do is, just in case it doesn't select and change over from myself, because I'm still going to willfully miss it, I've just selected my steer point, attack point. I'm going to stay in nav mode because I am doing a visual bomb. I find that the radar style attack mode requires you, basically guides you to a point where you'll be flying straight and level, which is on paper a nice idea, but not my style. See the Shilka's on the other side of the road there, and we just cut a line of the bombs. They're already through us, and I'm pulling low into this valley area here to escape. We're now weapon safe. For whatever reason, Bravo 4 did not activate, but that's fine. We make a turn out towards our target area. Alright, now all I'm trying to do is get myself some distance. Pull up on high, because I want to evaluate my work. And I'm well outside Shilka range now. Shouldn't be any threat. I'm just going to zoom in here. We can see we've hit the front half of the convoy. Numerous secondaries, several explosions. Now we can land.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the analysis section of Sambrief. So we're looking here at the historical section and Ghost Dog in his Viggen. Ghost Dog will be performing a low-level, level bombing approach using retarded bombs to hit this convoy, protected by 4 Shilkas. Now, of course, the Viggen being a historical aircraft, he's going to have to employ low-level tactics to get, first of all, close to the convoy without being detected, and then stay at low level and high speed in order to make it much harder for the Shilka crews to effectively engage him. So, first thing I want to say is his excellent approach here using terrain masking towards this little valley here in the Caucasus region. So he's going to look at threading his way through this valley to the left, avoiding both sound masking and radar masking himself, using the terrain to his advantage. Now, the Viggen is a very fast platform, even when it's loaded down with a whole bunch of bombs. So looking at this now, we're going to zoom in and we're going to watch this just awesome aircraft cutting its way through, low altitude, 2,000 feet minus, probably looking at way less than that, probably only a few hundred feet using your radar altimeter, using every possible bit of terrain here. Notice how he doesn't pop out left over the river here, or the lake, otherwise his sound would travel and he would be spotted on radar. So this convoy now only have maybe 4 or 5 seconds worth of Ghost Dog coming in, so about now is probably when they detect him on radar, and as you can see, it's already too late for them. They'll pop some fire out of him, but it's too late. His weapons are still away. Whole bunch of guided bombs, unguided bombs. Bang, 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 bang. Off they go. That convoy has been struck, and of course, that is it. He's one pass, and then he's out. That was an exposure of, had to be less than 5 seconds there for dropping his weapons. Now, of course, Ghost Dog is solo here, as most DCS players would be. However, in reality, I will comment that they have perhaps even 4, maybe even 6 aircraft to go after these convoys, so that entire convoy would have been sprinkled there with a whole bunch of high explosive death, and it would be a very bad time to be a Soviet. Other than that, great exit there, staying at low level, getting as far away as possible, still using terrain masks you see over the mountains back here. But now that he's deemed himself far enough away from the Soviet convoy, he's climbing back up. Now, of course, again, I will comment that in real life there would be a lot of Soviet other medium and long-range SAM systems, which would make popping up like this perhaps a risky endeavour. However, for the purposes of demonstration, that was an excellent attack, rendered successfully with good weapons on target and also time on target. So, no real comments there. They tried to shoot him, they completely whiffed it, completely missed, and had absolutely no time to stop Ghost Dog from destroying what looks like a good third of the convoy there. So congratulations, and I hope you've enjoyed looking at this segment.
For the modern engagement, we actually have some A-10s. The A-10s are armed with Mavericks and CBU 97s and 105s, the WICMIDs. And it's just going to be a case of fly over to them, and I intend to neutralize the entire convoy, but because I'm going to have standoff weapons, I'll have the ability to pelt a few Mavericks out at the CSUs using my targeting pod and Mavericks, soften up that area, ideally kill all of them, but at least kill 2 or 3 of them, and then hopefully we'll see each part of the convoy getting wrecked by the combined effects munitions or the sensor fuse weapons.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the analysis section of Sambrief. So looking at the modern section here with Ghost in his A10C. And really, what I'm going to aim to show you here in several small clips, as of course the A10 is not exactly known for its speed or its agility really, is I'm going to show you just exactly how potent standard weapons are and the reason why they were developed by NATO and America mostly in dealing with convoys with short-range point defense, especially self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Regardless of how far their radar can see, they are limited fundamentally by the fact that they are a ballistic-based system using cannons. And also you will see why such systems were often paired with longer-range missile-based point defense such as SAM-8 in the 1970s and 80s, and then later on SAM-15 and SAM-19 with blended missile and gun defense there, and also networked SAMs further forward. So we join Ghost Dog in his initial dive towards the convoy here he's aiming for, and he's going to fire his standard missiles. His priority target is going to be the Shilkas and the other cannon-armed vehicles within this convoy, due to they pose the greatest threat to him. So let's play. Joining him here, coming through 12,000 feet now, looking for Mach 0.6 and about 5 miles to launch his first Maverick, so about here-ish. There we go. There goes the Maverick. Looks like a Maverick D there. So an infrared guided weapon. Fire and forget, of course, allows him to immediately turn defensive and separate, increase his range away from the convoy. Of course, I'm sure he'll be using the targeting pod and also using visually scanning here the target there, making sure that weapon impacts where he wants it to. And really, this just exactly shows why these missiles are so potent, and why the Soviets and later on, of course, the Russian Federation has developed much longer ranged point defense frontal systems, as he is still miles away from any effective engagement that the Shilka can possibly provide this convoy. He is almost 10,000 feet above its maximum effective altitude, and he's about 4 or 5 miles away, which is again far exceeding the 1.5 miles of effective sort of slant range, or almost 2 miles of effective slant range in a vertical plane as well. So we're going to cut here, and you're going to join me back where he fires his second Maverick. Right, welcome back. So we join Ghost Dog here, only at 7,000 feet now, Mach 0.04. And he's going to fire a second Maverick at a Shilka within this convoy. So once again, coming in well away from any sort of effective return fire the Shilkans could do. Although he is getting a little bit close now for comfort, so perhaps I would look at a re-attack in this sort of situation as you're about to breach the bubble. Nevertheless, there we go. Off the left wing goes the Maverick. Nice hard defensive turn. Now, of course, Ghost Dog knows there are no man pads within this battalion, although they would be in a reality situation. So, of course, I would probably think about popping a bit of flares here and maybe doing a bit more of an aggressive break turn. But not even the Shilkas there could get anywhere near an effective engagement, and he's just popped one. So we join Ghost once again here up at 8,700 feet. A little bit slow, he's come off a climb. But here I want you to look at probably the only mistake Ghost makes here when employing his stand-off weapons. So he's going to make a sharp 90-degree left turn at about, let's see, I reckon probably about a 15-20 degree nose down attitude. So here we go, coming in, 210 knots CAS, 8,200 feet. Here we go, looking for about 20 to 30 degrees nose down. He's well within firing parameters here, looking for the keyhole for the Maverick, but you'll see. I think he sort of forgot how close he was getting here. His head's probably well in his Maverick sight there. So he gets the Maverick away and then realizes, oh god, we're close, sees the tracer fire and makes a big breakaway. Luckily, none of these really come anywhere near him. Again, a little bit on the excess of the effective range there. But valiant effort by the Soviet crews to try and dissuade him from coming any closer. And finally, we'll look at him employing his final runs on the target using two CBU 105 wind-corrected munitions dispensers. Excellent, we join Ghost Dog back in his final turn, up here at 9,600 feet. Target's captured, and he's going to drop a pair of CBU 105 cluster bombs with the guided bomblets in them. So, of course, now that he's completely attrited the ability of the enemy air defense to engage him, he's going to start with impunity, breaching directly overhead of this convoy, and honestly just embarrassing them at this point. He has complete impunity. He can engage with complete impunity up here, and he's using various guided and non-guided weapons later on. So I won't show you these going down, but of course these two CB-105s are now going to wipe out the vast majority of this company down here, and well, it's a very bad day to be a Soviet. Anyway, thank you very much for looking at and listening to my little presentation here on the TACV response part of this video essay, and we'll see you in the next one.
I'd like to thank Figmo 42 for his time studying these previously through Threat of the Week. Of course, Jive Turkey, also known as Aeronamic, for his sub-brief series, which provided me some inspiration for this show format. Tactical Pascal and his community is ever growing, and his In Harm's the Way series was something that kicked off for this as well. Yield Dynamics, of course, for DCS World. That allows me to demonstrate these things. SAM Simulator as well, the reference material and the software to demonstrate. And TacView, which is where Figmo does his evaluations. I also referred to this fantastic guide, which is the Soviet Army Operations and Tactics. There's a whole section there on the Shilka, but there's other vehicles in there as well. So if you're a bit of a milsim enthusiast and you'd like to learn more about the Soviet Army's operations and tactics, this is a fantastic read. I'd also like to thank Eric Johnson because he translated the Swedish field manual there for me and gave me some English translations. This is vital for my work flying the Viggen today. Here's the surface to air missile map that I've been using for photography and placement. And of course, the music by Eric Matthias for our intro. Now just remember that, of course, the featured content is intended for entertainment purposes only, and the authors do not intend for this to be used academically. However, considerable effort has been placed in providing sources and references where available. Neither the author nor my guests, to the best of my knowledge, accessed or disseminated any classified data, tactics, or sources. Coming up next time, we'll be looking at the SA4. And we'll probably be moving along to Falcon BMS for this because as of time of writing, DCS does not have an SA4 system implemented. And you'll see both why it was a fantastic innovation and also largely doomed to fail. Take care, and I'll see you soon.